we got a lot to talk about, folks. You know, when we have these conversations, no conversation is complete without you. So make sure y'all get ready to post your discussion points in our chat on YouTube and on Facebook, and we'll make sure we'll get as many of your voices in as possible. But Hassan, let's talk a little bit about what's going on at the Supreme Court. Of course, this past Monday of this week, the new session of the Supreme Court started. There's a lot of expectations, a lot of fanfare, especially with new Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson coming onto the bench, and she jumped right in a very, very big way. First and foremost, let's talk about some of the big cases that this session is going to be posing for the Supreme Court. Might be, and I'm not trying to use this term loosely, but this might be one of the most historic sessions for a lot of different reasons, Hassan. Because not just because of Justice Jackson being added to the bench, but also because of some of these big cases, these big decisions around voting rights, abortion, voting rights. You're talking about same-sex marriages, interracial marriages. A lot of big fundamental issues are on the agenda. But I wanted to start off talking about this first one. About what the Guardian has described as being one of the most terrifying cases of all is about to be heard by the United States Supreme Court. Take a look at this here, folks. Look at that. Boom. This is from the Guardian. And they're talking about this case related to a rule. And I want to throw this up there, Keenan, if we can. Let's talk about how this case of Moore v. Harper, which could lock in right-wing control of the United States for generations. Here's what they said. The leading example of this disturbing shift is a little-known case called Moore v. Harper, which could lock in right-wing control of the United States for generations. The heart of the Moore case is a formerly fringe legal notion called the independent state legislature theory. This theory posits that an obscure provision in the United States Constitution allowing state legislators to set time, place, and manner rules for federal elections should not be subject to judicial oversight. In other words, state legislatures should have the absolute power to determine how federal elections are run without court interference. Ooh.
Yeah, huge.
So, so I'm assuming, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, bro. You study political science. You know this stuff much more than I do in some cases, right? Is this one of those cases where we didn't think that that would be a major game-changing case because we've been kind of operating on automatic pilot when it comes to federal elections for so long, but then Trump happened. January 6th happened, and now this might be a game-changing case. Is that what we're looking at with this?
It was going to be game-changing regardless. I think more people will probably pay attention because of what happened with Trump. But what we have is an evolving court, and it's a difference of opinion in regards to how the court should operate and more so how the justices should interpret the cases that are coming before him. Now, if we go back in history, and I've talked about this before when we talk about Supreme Court issues, the Federalist Society, known at many of them as originalists, were these conservatives, and still are, these conservatives such as former judge. He tried to get on the Supreme Court from Ronald Reagan, and the Senate would not confirm him, but he was former U.S. Solicitor General Robert Bork. They believed in this jurisprudence of original intention, Faraji, and meaning the words of the Constitution were to be interpreted exactly how the framers of the Constitution meant it. So it can't evolve. It was supposed to stay static. But those words were never to be, evolve over time. And while those on the left and more their greatest adversary, Justice William Brenner, believed that the genius of the Constitution rests not in its static interpretation or meaning based off those that are dead and gone, but that it evolves in its adaptability over time is what made the Constitution so great. And so you're starting to see these arguments play out. That is really what Roe v. Wade came about. Back in the 80s, when Ronald Reagan was in, you had Bork and these other former Justice Scalia, he was an attorney back then. They were interpreting, okay, we know we don't want Roe v. Wade. So how do we attack Roe v. Wade? In one argument to overturn it or several arguments? And they were trying to figure out how we go about overturning precedents such as Roe v. Wade. And so you see people like former Chief Justice Harry Blackmun, who admitted, even during Roe v. Wade, that the words of the Constitution did not compel him and those voting in favor of Roe v. Wade to afford such protections to women. Because in the Constitution, it never mentions the right to privacy, but rather the court had said that over time, they began to recognize the privacies that are being afforded to U.S. citizens, and they afforded the decision of a woman's reproductive right as one of those privacies, right? So it was never a constitutional matter. So originalists are saying, if it's not written, it ain't so. If it ain't in the Constitution, I ain't going with it. And so what they realized is it's not the arguments they were making, it's the justices. So they started saying, well, we need better justices, more ultra-conservative justices like we have today. We have a 6-3 majority of ultra-conservative justices. The only one that might be fluttering is Chief Justice John Roberts, who at times may go with the liberals, but that's still a 5-4 decision, not in favor of what many of us would deem precedent in many cases. We saw it in Roe v. Wade. And so you said in the beginning of the show, this session is going to be ultra important because, you know, cases like Moore v. Harper is something that goes under the radar. Everybody's paying attention to the Alabama case that we'll talk about a little bit later in regards to the gerrymandering and what that means for minorities. Everybody's talking about the affirmative action that's going to be taken up later on in this session. They're talking about the more high profile, but Moore v. Harper is just as important, if not more important, than some of these other cases that are before the courts, is because it speaks to how our society moves forward. Are we going to be a democratic society, or are we going to be authoritarian? Are we going to allow these courts and these legislatures across the country to begin to move in such a way that the citizens really don't have any real win, because you can't bring it before the courts? And part of Moore v. Harper, the basis of it, the heart of it is, as they're talking about, is that the legislatures will have absolute power. You cannot then challenge this in the courts. And the problem with that is the majority of the legislatures across this country are Republican-leaning legislatures who have a certain way of operating, a certain way of looking at things. And that means if you can't no longer challenge it, not only can they begin to do things electorally across the country, but as we've seen in the Trump case, when he tried to, many people don't understand the electoral process. Well, when a state such as Maryland says 10 electoral votes, right? So the popular vote, they vote, and whoever wins that popular vote, the electoral count, the 10 electoral votes will then go to whoever won the popular vote. But if this passes, what'll happen is you'll start to see states like Maryland, who may have voted popularly for the Democrat, then they'll say, no, we're just going to give 8 or out of all 10 to the Republican nominee. And there's no way to challenge that in the court system. And so what this is a further erosion of the Voting Rights Act. And that's part of the argument that's being made on the North Carolina law that we're going to talk about that's before the courts, that was argued just on Tuesday. But this one is one that I think, Faraji, we're going to see a majority pass this. And the reason why I say that is people don't realize that about 70 cases a year are heard by the Supreme Court. It's what we call a very lazy court, because out of 7,000 petitions, only about 70 of them get heard a year. Now compare that to Brazil, who hears about 100,000 cases a year. What? Think about 100,000 for Brazil, and we're talking about 70 cases in America.
Wait a minute, hold on, bro. Very quickly, why is that? Is that because of the cycle, like how long the session actually lasts? Is not like a quote unquote year-round session? Why is that?
No, part of it, and part of it is, our justices have felt like we only cherry pick the cases that we want to hear. Whereas though Brazil's legal system is a little different. Once you appeal the way we appeal, you go to the lower courts. When it goes to their Supreme Court, they typically hear almost every case that comes before them. Whereas though our Supreme Court, if they did that, they would be doing about 7,000 petitions or 7,000 cases a year. But instead, they decide through a majority vote that we never hear and never see, but the justices decide on which cases that they want to take up. And the issue with that is many times, especially with these conservative majorities, the cases they decide to take up are usually cases that they want to get passed, that they realize either they want and they know that they'll get passed, or two, that they feel needs a higher court's approval, right? And so in cases like Moore, you're going to have a legal theory that's being argued, but you'll have justices who are letting their ultra-conservative biases weigh in on how they decide and how they vote in these cases. And recent history has shown us spectacularly that right-wing think tanks and their funders have found this out. Since the 80s, they have meticulously tried cases in a lower court knowing that they were either going to win, or if they didn't, that they were going to appeal it to a higher court and eventually get it to where they want it, in the U.S. Supreme Court. Because once you have control of the Supreme Court, there is no other remedy beyond that. And if they feel like if we can get it through the lower courts and get it there, that we can find judges. It's basically like you're shopping judges, right? But in this case, they're shopping courts. They know if we can get it and we appeal it to the lower courts, to the higher court, we're going to get a favorable decision in many cases. And that's what they've been doing on many of these right-wing cases that, even as Roe v. Wade has been precedent, they knew that, okay, we'll take cases that strip away at Roe v. Wade, and at some point, we're going to get a court that's going to be in our favor, that's going to overturn Roe v. Wade. They've been attacking Roe v. Wade since the 80s, since Ronald Reagan has been president. And they've been chipping away at it, and they finally got the court that they needed to overturn what many thought would have been precedent for our lifetime and even beyond that.
Wow. Let me take some comments very quickly before we take our first pause today. Taylor, you checked in as we've been talking to Mr. Politics Hassan Giordano about this Moore v. Harper case, which can be a game changer on how states look at federal election. Take a look, Taylor. You said it needs to be amended. Real Brooklyn, you checked in, my guy. You said, what's the difference between this and the poll tax era and the system of the racist origins of the Electoral College, which still empowers white Southern mentality till this very day? And then Taylor, you came back and said, interpretation of the law will be problematic from now on. It's a form of manipulation. Wow. All right, so let's kind of break this down, Hassan. First and foremost, where should we stand on this? Where should states stand on this? Where should Black folks and citizens stand on this? Do we need to really? Does this legislative state theory? Does this really need to be amended or changed in any way?
Well, the problem is we can stand any which way we want to, but it's not going to mean anything before the justices, right? Because they supposedly can't be swayed politically by any types of rallies and things of that sort. Congressionally, we can try to, possibly do something. But I don't even think congressionally, legislative wise, because these are theories that are being argued. The independent state legislative, the ISL, that's a theory that they've been put in place. And it's a theory that really goes to the fabric of state legislatures. So the best way that we can kind of fight back against the ISL theory is to be able to retake control of the legislative chambers across the country. Because again, wow, many a times we look at the congressional and the national elections, but it's the state that we always, they said a long time ago, all politics are local. And so you got to look at the state legislatures. Many of them, again, are Republican controlled. and Republican leaning. So in this particular instance, you will really have to kind of fight against retaking control of the legislative chambers, especially in the southern part of America.
And what's about this whole poll tax era? When Real Brooklyn checked in about that, what's your take on it?
Honestly, I can't assume what the brother was talking about. Maybe they can clarify a little bit more. I mean, I'm assuming that they're talking about the poll tax, and we're talking about with the voting, and that's part of what we're going to see on this North Carolina law that's being argued right now. And Justice Jackson made me so proud this week. She showed that her and the first Latina Justice Sotomayor are going to be a great 1-2 punch, because both of them try to get down to the fabric of these issues, right? But they also argue, they're very no nonsense but very respectful jurists, right? But they want to get to the heart of some of these cases and show their colleagues that a lot of the decisions that they're making can affect the daily lives of minorities across this country. And they do it in a smooth way, that it's not in your face. It's not making these white colleagues of theirs, feel, and I say white, I mean Clarence Thomas too, doesn't make them feel taken back. Is this angry black woman like it? No, they're they smooth. I mean, if you would have heard Justice Jackson argue this week on the Voting Rights Act about this North Carolina law and how she broke down the 14th Amendment of America's Constitution and what it was meant to be, and how Alabama's Republican Attorney General, who was arguing before them, Steve Marshall, really was not making a logical case when it came to dividing these voters into the districts. They were making a case of, I want to say, I can't think of what he was saying. Man, it was just so smooth. It just made your mouth drop. And
wow.
Like she's just, it shows that she's going to be a force to be reckoned with on these courts.
Absolutely.
Race neutrality. That's what it was. Race neutrality.
Okay. And I wanted to certainly bring that up. We're going to take a quick pause, but I want to certainly bring that up because, when we're looking at this whole ISL theory, and then when we look at what's already currently happening, for me, it gives states a lot of power. Now, I don't know if folks really understand how much power that states have always had when it comes to issues of federal elections and all of those things. But this is so big to me because, like back to your point very quickly, you said we got to get more of our people into state legislators. We've always been seeing a couple of things. When you deal with civics and politics, you've always been told to look at the presidency, And over the past few years, we've now been seeing all politics is local. So it's about local. Now we're starting to see the conversation go on and say it's not just local in the city or the county that you're in. It's really the state. It's the state that has the power. It's the state that has the money around policing. It's the state that has the money around education. It's the state that determines how elections are done. And so now we have to kind of expand our understanding of where the power lies in order for us to make the moves that we need to make. And I think that's, given that we're seeing this just weeks before the midterm elections happening in November, it's important that we drive that point home. Every organization, whether you're talking about the NAACP, you're talking about the Urban League, you're talking about the CBC, you're talking about, Black Votes Matter, and all of these organizations that are pushing the conversation forward about voting rights and the importance of representation. It's letting people know, hey, the states and the local politics are dictating the agenda. It's the state and local politics. Very quickly, Hassan, what's your take on that, bro?
Well, it's always been to some degree to that point, right? But people need to understand politics. The reason why they say all politics is local, because most of the essential needs that you have on a daily basis, whether it's your local taxes, whether it's your police department, your education, all of that is local, right? That is not more like a federal issue. So a lot of the stuff that you deal with that you need from the trash collection, that is so. But the problem is many of our constituents and people don't understand the difference between a council person whose job mostly is the kind of nitty gritty, making sure the trash gets picked up, the police, things of that sort. Whereas though the state is different. It's a legislative body that deals with the educational funding that goes to local jurisdictions. It deals with the state laws and how they're enacted. And the federal government is completely different in how they operate. And so people have to understand the difference. And especially when you're arguing certain points and trying to understand the mechanisms of government and how they're done, you have to understand which one. Otherwise, you're going to be calling your federal elected representative talking about your trash. And they're going to be like, what are you talking about? Why are you calling me? Right. And instead of doing their job and saying, you know what? You're my constituent. So I'm going to make sure you get with the council person that's in your district, because that's their job. That's their responsibility. But I'm going to take it upon myself to connect you with their aid to make sure that gets done. That's the type of elected leadership that we no longer have. It's like, why are you calling me? I ain't got nothing to do with that. Goodbye. And nothing's getting done. And it frustrates the average voter who thinks like, okay, well, they're just telling me to go kick rocks. So why am I even going to turn out the vote when I can't get nothing done?
That's right.
Political end.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.
Let's talk Kanye West. This is what he said. I can't even, I'm not happy with him. I'm not happy with him. And I'm asking this question, folks, how far should free speech go? This is what Kanye, or Ye, said about George Floyd when he was on Drink Champs with Noriega over the weekend, that aired over the weekend. Take a look, folks. He said, quote, I watched the George Floyd documentary that Candace Owens put out. One of the things that his two roommates said was they want a tall guy like me, and the day that he died, he said a prayer for 8 minutes. They hit him with the fentanyl. If you look, the guy's knee wasn't even on his neck like that. Let's bring Bree Fly into it.
Leave me out of this. No.
This is not about making mockery. You know what I'm saying? This is really about the fact that, bro, you are crossing so many lines right now because of this your whatever mental space that you in. But you can't even acknowledge the truth, bro. It's hurtful. It's hurtful to all of us who saw the video and the pain of police terrorizing black men. It's hurtful. And not just hurtful in a sense like, oh man, you shouldn't have said that. Like, you got some black men who said, man, maybe he was hit with the fentanyl. say that shit when the police is on your neck, bro. That's a common move. That's a tactic, a technique of holding a man down to put their foot on your neck, then your knee on your neck. Like,
You know, it's interesting.
I mean, and I'm again, this is not to this. I'm not trying to put you in no crazy position, B. I'm trying to just simply make the point. This dude is going out of bounds. He talking about free speech, free speech, free speech. Look what he said about the free speech thing. Because he's also about to acquire, he's also interested in buying the right-wing social media platform Parler. He's considering buying that. But take a look. Let me say. Let's show this one, Keenan. Ye's net worth is reportedly $2 billion. Let's throw this quote on there, bro. Much of his fortune, thank you. Much of his fortune comes from his Yeezy sneaker brand in partnership with Gap and Adidas. However, Ye severed business ties with Gap recently, and Adidas said it's also reviewing its business relationship with him. JP Morgan Chase also cut ties with the rapper before he said all of this stuff. Parler is one of several right-wing friendly platforms to emerge during the Trump era as the former president's supporter claimed unfair treatment by Twitter and other apps. We know Ye is off of Twitter. He's off of Instagram. Now he's talking about buying Parler. How far does free speech go? I want you to speak on that. How far does free speech go, B? Because now you into a space, bro, you don't belong. And I don't care how much you say, oh man, I'm trying to get people to think. I'm trying to get people to think. Because George Floyd's family is considering a lawsuit for the defamation. It's been already proven that Chauvin, his knee on brother George Floyd's neck was the cause of his death. It's already been proven. It's been discussed in court. Now you trying to come up with some dumbass thing talking about fentanyl. These celebrities, man.
Listen, there are certain flat earth moments in the world that happen. You know what I'm saying? There are certain flat earth comments that come out of our mouth, all right? And that make the people be like, what? That doesn't make any sense, all right? But at the end of the day, what I'm not gonna participate in, right, is the extraction of 2 minutes out of a 2-hour conversation. You know what I'm saying? Like that right there, you know what I'm saying, is what I don't do with my Black free thinkers. Alrighty. I'm going to listen to the full and I'm going to understand the fullness. You know what I'm saying? And so if there's a 2-minute that I don't agree with, then I'm going to still allow that person to have their 2 minutes that I don't agree with. But chances are there's probably 15 minutes that you do agree with. Focus in on that. And so
it's hard to let me tell you why. You know why?
Here's the thing, because because people are so used to everyone being in the choir.
Look, when Kanye said that what he said about Lizzo, Black people have an obesity problem. I agree. I'm saying taking Lizzo out of the conversation, Black people have an obesity problem in our community. We can't act like that's not a problem, right? I agree. But what Kanye does, and I said this before, when you got truth mixed with madness.
But see, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. Someone is always able to disagree because, you know what I'm saying, you agree with what he said about Lizzo. But with that, there's probably 500 of your particular fans who are obese, who will feel a way about the fact that you ride with him on that part. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, and that's the part, like why do we expect to agree 100% with people who we bang with? You know what I'm saying? It's okay for you to bang.
I don't bang with Kanye no more.
Evidently you do, because still we manage to talk about the person you don't bang with. I know,
and I'm talking about it because it's news, though.
So the law of attraction part, you know what I'm saying, with everybody.
I mean, look, I don't bang with Trump, but we talk about Trump. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to talk about stuff. Like, no. Here's the thing. No, here's my take on that. Thing, very quickly.
That's how we end up.
No. See, I'm not. Look, you can't.
That's how we
wait a minute. Hold on.
That's how we stir the pot and keep our jobs.
No, wait a minute. No, it's not about that. You can't. And I'm talking about the big picture of conversation, the big picture of communication, right? We can't act as if people don't exist. Like, and here's my case in point. When Trump does all the stuff that he do, right, it creates an impact. It gets people talking. It changes minds. It shapes context. If we here, whether it's this platform or some other platform, act as if we could just be like, oh, I don't want to pay attention to them, we're doing ourselves a disservice, because it is moments and opportunities like this that we need to talk about, that we need to either uproot or that we need to cultivate to figure out where we stand, right? Because these individuals have influence, they still have a platform, they still have some sense of power. So we can't act like, oh, Kanye no longer exists, because guess what? When you start talking about moments of our struggle, we could have, when Kanye said slavery was a choice, we got to talk about that. Why is that important to talk about? Because somebody who's Black, who don't know their history, is going to think that slavery was a choice. Some young person who don't know their history is going to think slavery was a choice. My point in saying that is that
we know the fullness of the context, and most of us agree with the fullness of the context. But when we take the Gemini soundbite away from the context, we start white manning, and that's never safe. You know what I'm saying? Like, it brings us back to this conservative middle, when if we're actually moving the culture forward, you're able to say, all right, boom, this is my agree with and disagree with column when it comes to this person. You know what I'm saying? Because once you want to have a conversation about stripping liberties from a person, that's literally having a conversation of diminishing value. What I'm not going to do is have a conversation that diminishes another Black man, Black woman's value based on my opinion of that person. If I do that, then I am no different from my enemy, white male patriarchal idea. We have to be able to all sit at the table with different opinions about a thing, different methods of communication. If we can't do that and still get to the bottom of what's really important for all of us, then you're just lost in the sauce. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, the thing about media is that, on one hand, you're told to stay relevant. You're told to speak off the cuff and say what's on your mind, because that's what the people want. It's going to keep them going. But then you want to dismiss and devalue the person for doing that and keeping his name on your mouth.
No.
Right?
I'm trying to dismiss. It's not about dismissing the value of the person. It's about setting the record straight. He's wrong. He's an influential person.
He's a flat earther. You know what I'm saying? And so at the end, and that's why I brought up flat earthing. You know what I'm saying? Because once flat earthing came up, right, we were able to see people, right, in our society who, like, we didn't know that you thought the earth was flat. It's like, what the fuck? The shit was mind blowing. And it made us feel as if there was a new line that was established. Are you a round earther or a flat earther? Today, the idea sounds bizarre, juvenile, lowbrow, because we're all on the same earth, period. All right. So my opinion about its shape, does it really matter enough to be dismissed? At the end of the day, we know what happened. This man was killed in front of our face.
Right.
Period. There is no coming back from that.
Right.
We are not his. We burn this place down as a result. Okay? So it doesn't matter what somebody says in retrospect. What does matter is how deeply we hang on every sentence this man utters. I am a fan, and I don't hang on his every word as deeply as his quote unquote non-fans do. That right there is a psychological situation.
That's celebrity culture. That's celebrity culture.
And that's why that celebrity stays that celebrity, and that's why that celebrity keeps on winning.
No. Here's what I'm saying.
Continue to go
No. See. Here's the thing.
Is on his side. He keeps people talking about.
No, I ain't on his side.
His praises or his dismissal. Like it doesn't matter when everybody's still acquired to your name. Everybody's over here screaming, yay!
No. Ain't nobody screaming. Here's the thing, sis. The thing is that if you keep putting out the foolishness for people to see it for themselves, then maybe it will shift the admiration, the love, the idol worship that we have of individuals. You know what I'm saying? Like this is why celebrities don't really, for many, many years, y'all know, celebrities don't talk outside of their art, whatever their craft is, right? They don't talk outside of sports world. But the moments that celebrities start to get into a space and trust and believe, their handlers around them say, look, don't get into these spaces and you're not clear. You're not clear. You can.
It is if you say an opinion that is not popular, it has the potential of affecting you financially. So
and guess what? And guess what? I'm good with that. I'm good with that. I'm good with stop idol worshiping. That's what I'm talking about. Like we look up to these individuals, right? These folks, some of these folks, I mean, exorbitant amount of money spending on the mad foolishness. They feeding us foolishness as a consumer. If they're not feeding us foolishness, they feeding our children some foolishness, right? And you can't stop. And you can't stop the flow of foolishness that's coming into your home. I don't care where you live, how you live. The fact is that when you step out, you don't even got to step out. When you wake up, you're introduced to the madness of America every time you open up your eyes. And my point is that in order for us to stop this flow, we have to become empowered enough to say, you know what, I'm not going to, let me hear what this person, that way we put it out there. I'm going to put it out there because you can stop idol worshiping. So we can stop idol worshiping. I'm tired of the idol worship. I'm tired of us putting hope in people.
That ain't me. I don't idol worship. The person that idol worships, is literally like the person who looks at TV, who looks at media, who looks at the celebrity, stargazes, goes into their bedroom and tries to dress and become them because they want that. And listen, you know what I'm saying? Idol worshiping is a real thing, and so, but that's not what everybody does when we consume a person, when we consume entertainment, when we're consuming the mouthpiece, when we're consuming the celebrity for that X amount of time. You know what I'm saying? And so most of us don't. Media more so idol worships Kanye because media knows that as long as media keeps on saying the name that keeps people going, then they'll still be relevant. And so at the end of the day, what is he really doing? You know what I'm saying? What is he actually affecting in your household? Not
but see, no, he doesn't affect nothing in my household. But here's what I'm saying. Here's what I'm saying, B.
Household, not a thing.
Hey, let me just tell you. I'm just telling you, and I feel you on that. He doesn't affect us personally, right? But the show is called The Culture. Okay, let's like the show is called The Culture. The show, the platform is based.
Culture.
He's a part of the culture, and here's the thing. The culture has to be discussed, right? And when you have individuals who, let me reframe this. We are trying in this day and time to get us to think about the whole and not about the individual. We are trying in this day and time to focus on truth and not on emotional rants and emotional outbursts. We are trying in this day and time to have real conversations about the progress and the elevation of our consciousness. And so when you're talking about an individual who has influence, who we know, who we have kind of quote unquote grown up with, are you talking about an individual that has some sort of sway, right? If you're talking about a person that has the possibility to disrupt that, he can be a disruptor in the fashion space, but you're also disrupting the what we're trying to build in the culture. We need a different culture. And it can't rely on lies and just, I'm going to just go off and do whatever I feel like doing and saying whatever I say without no repercussion. Part of the culture needs to have a checks and balance. If a joker is talking all that madness, he needs to be checked for it.
The culture ain't a monolith and has never fully had a Ma'at-based commandment system that they've ever praised and atone to, like, understand, you know what I'm saying? Like, the culture is a living, breathing thing that moves like water, gets polluted and also purifies. This is the culture. This is the reality of it. There is no one person who is above the culture and there's no one who's below our culture if you actually deposit into it. That's what it is. You know what I'm saying? I will not ever devalue his deposits that he's put into our culture just because they have revved the people up and got them going and got them to think about shit that they haven't necessarily thought about before, having conversations. You know what I'm saying? Like, because of Kanye, we're still talking about George Floyd. Understand? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a way to shape it. You know what I'm saying? Without wanting to pull him and Candace on.
No. We're talking about George Floyd.
It is not about.
No, but
today we are talking about George Floyd because he uttered his name on Drink Champs.
Because he's disrespectful. His ass is disrespectful.
Listen,
he's disrespectful.
But he's still the
bro. It's like you talking about Emmett Till. It's like you talking about Emmett Till. What you gonna say? Emmett Till ain't get killed because of the lie of Carolyn Bryant? Nah, that wasn't a lie. Emmett Till got killed because he chose to drag his own self out of his home. You can't, bro. Like we here's the thing. We're in a time right now where our not only in our culture is our history is under attack each and every day. So we can't allow anybody, whether they're black or white, Asian or Latino, we can't allow anybody to disturb how history is, because in this day and time, you can get a joker something could have actually happened, but because it comes from somebody who has influence and power, then guess what? Some other people are going to make it believe, no, but that's not really happened. That's the power of Hollywood.
That's
the power of Hollywood. Somebody can utter something and then this shit it's not real.
Here's the thing. Generations later, we hear the woman lied. We have facts on the woman lied, right? But even at that point, you still had mothers and fathers who were still towing that conservative middle that said Emmett Till shouldn't have been looking at no woman. Emmett Till shouldn't have been you know. And so, like generations later, we're able to actually come to a new determination, everyone collectively. This is culture. Culture moves, culture updates, culture gets discussed, but at the end of the day, culture gets deposited into. And it's never our culture, we are real, we are breathing, we are traumatized.
Exactly. That's traumatizing.
And we're holy still. Like, understand, all of us. And so it's like we have to be able to find the patience with our people, because humans grow, humans develop, humans say shit, humans attract it. Yes, F.
No,
yes.
And look, trust and believe, I'm that guy. I'm that guy. Look, I love people. Look, check it out.
Love, you gonna be like, oh my God, I love them.
No. I'm the guy that allows humans to grow, but don't play the games about history. There's got to be some boundaries, bro. There's got to be some boundaries. I'm sick and tired of black celebrities making mockery of our struggle and thinking it's okay. Bro, you're going to get checked on that. I don't care who it is. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of black people. I'm tired of black people being ignorant. If this would happen 50 years ago, if George Floyd happened 50 years ago, and then he makes a point about it, it'd be one thing. But this just happened a few years ago. George Floyd has been talked about tremendously before Kanye West. We can't stop saying the summer of 2021, the racial reckoning of the killing of George Floyd. People are talking about George Floyd as a tipping point and a pivotal point of our movement, of our history, of the activism of the next generation. I'm gonna just simply put, don't fuck up history to try to fit your agenda, because that's dangerous.
History, one person can't fuck up history though.
No. I'm talking about black folk. You mean to tell me a black man can't even admit that another black man was killed by a white police officer because his knee was on his neck?
That's not what was happening. During that part of the conversation, Kanye was showing us, alrighty, a different part.
No. Here's the other part. I'm gonna push back on it because I think I'm tired of this. I'm trying to get people to think. Man, I don't want to hear that bullshit, man.
No, that's not what I was about to say. During that time, alrighty, what I was able to see was the depths of his alien conspiracy brain. Alrighty, not everybody believes in aliens and goes to and pays attention to Area 13, right? But you got some people that do, and they really into that, right? So during this period of time, he's also talking to you about other conspiracy rabbit holes he is fallen into, right? So
he's used that before. He's used that before. He said that shit about the White Lives Matter thing. Like, I thought it was funny to try to get people, dude, you're offending people. You are traumatizing black folks.
Mentality this gives you intel into his mentality. In this time, he was not speaking factual. He was speaking conspiracy conjecture. Like I'm saying, if you also believe, you know what I'm saying, to a 10th of a degree that this person has mental illness, alrighty, you also believe to a 10th of a degree, you know what I'm saying, that this person envelops some genius qualities, then you'll also have to believe that this person is going to say some shit all the way over to the left. You're also going to believe, you know what I'm saying, and know that there's going to be some other fringy sort of ideas that come along with this individual. Alrighty, at the end of the day, you have to be able to do your mathematics when it comes to Kanye. And at no time are you able to apply basic math, 2 + 2 = 4, and you get a clear Kanye. That is not what he is.
Guess what, B?
And so what, you just want to take freedom of speech from the mentally ill?
No, I ain't talking about freedom of speech. I'm just saying, look. Like, freedom of speech is supposed to, freedom of speech is a God-given right? Because a lot of places don't give you allowed to express yourself. I am a huge advocate of freedom of speech, but use it responsibly. Use it to speak the truth, right? Don't try to play these mind games of like, I'm really trying to say this so y'all can think that. Look. We don't know. In this day and time, B, you know it and I know it. All this double talk, this shit is getting to be a problem. Black folks in particular, and the people around this world, you need to tell people straight speech. Ain't all this extra double talk. Tell people what it is. If you got a view, don't be like, well, I'm gonna frame it this way so y'all can think that way. No, because guess what? It's that type of approach that's got people confused. It's that type of approach that rewrites history. It's that type of approach where if a child were to hear you, then they won't be empowered by the language that you use, because words got power and it's got energy. And at this point in time, we have to use our platforms responsibly. It's one thing that you believe a certain thing. It's another thing that you know you believe something and you deny what you believe and put out a counter understanding of what you and everyone else just saw. Now you becoming you going into a destructive place.
So. I think that truth is subjective. Each person has their own truth that is able to be debated by another person. Period.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
No,
like that's just what it is when it comes to certain facts and opinions and perspectives, because that's what we're dealing with. We're not dealing with an autopsy report, an undebatable thing. We are literally talking about that. That's not what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with a documentary that's based in a conspiracy.
I'm not talking about the documentary.
Rhetoric.
The hell with the documentary. We're talking about what actually happened. He's talking about he's seen a documentary Candace Owens puts out.
That's literally what he's referring to. That's literally the conversation.
I saw the quote. I saw the quote. But did you see the end of that quote?
Listen, I saw the interview. I didn't see a quote. I listened to him speaking. You know what I'm saying? Right. I watched the entire thing. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I didn't read a quote. I didn't read a quote. I was there watching the conversation. You know what I'm saying? So I know the fuller context of the conversation.
The guy's knee wasn't even on his neck like that. That's what Kanye said.
That was a quote of a larger conversation. And if you weren't aware of the larger conversation, I'm trying to let you know the larger conversation here.
Don't wait till November 8th. We can vote today. Y'all early vote started this week.
We're on Savannah State University's campus. We will be dorm storming today, giving out treats for everyone. We hope to see everyone at the polls when it comes to November.
If you believe we got power, let them know. Make some noise. Put a fist up. I need to see a fist in the air because we got power. Come on, you put it up. Come get your shirt. We're out here in the streets of Savannah, Georgia. James, do not forget to go vote. I got you. If we vote the right people in, we can make a change. We can get these resources in our community.
I am a woman, and it is important that we have the say-so of what we want to do with our bodies.
We're concentrating on entrepreneurism, providing young people with resources and training that they need in order to change their trajectories. We want Black down. Democracy is on the ballot. Voting rights is on the ballot. Voting suppression is on the ballot. I am most passionate about those three combined because they all impact each other.
Savannah is my home. I care about my community, and I care about representation in my community.
Our voices are still going to be heard no matter what kind of obstacles try to come up against us to stop us from voting. We're still going to be standing our ground.
The effort that's being made to keep our communities from voting. So that makes me realize it's even more important, because if it wasn't important, they wouldn't be fighting to make sure we couldn't vote.
This doesn't stop this year. This is a forever movement.
We're going to exert our power as a people, walk in our rightful place. We're going to change our communities, fight for our communities, and build our communities.
All right, folks. Wanted to switch gears to talk about something that has been trending, which is what is the state of the woman here in this country. This past Friday, a group of organizations that are dedicated to the issue of abortion and reproductive rights and other issues that affect women all over this country decided to make moves to call for a day without us. Take a look at this, folks, because this is something that was highlighted in the root. Can you imagine a day without the work of Black women? No, I cannot. The Day Without Us campaign wants us to try. I don't want to try. I do not want to try imagining a day without my sisters. And so we wanted to talk a little bit more about this campaign because it's so important that we look at these things, not just from a political space, but really understand the value and the importance of the woman's work, the woman's speech, and the woman's presence as relates to the issue. So we're joined by Dr. Avis. Dr. Avis, who you've seen, guys, on Roland Martin Unfiltered. This sister is a phenomenal sister, and she's been talking about a number of issues. She's one of our political analysts here on Black Star Network. She is an author. She is a professor. So she's a scholar in a lot of different spaces. We got Dr. Avis joining us today. Let's see. Dr. Avis, how are you this afternoon?
I am great. How are you? Great to be on your show.
Thank you so much for taking time out your busy schedule to be with us, Doc. We truly appreciate it. Absolutely. Now, Dr. Avis, I'm going to go back to this question that the Root posed, and I think that, which is why we wanted to have you on here, because it was talking about this idea, this campaign of a day without us, really looking at abortion rights, reproductive rights of women, and women saying enough is enough. First and foremost, what do you make of where we are with women, with the woman, the state of the woman here in America, particularly Black women?
Yeah.
It seems like there are so many different things happening with sisters today. And as a man, I always try to make sure that I'm on the right side of history, Doc.
We appreciate that.
So that's why I'm always open up the space to hearing from dynamic sisters like yourself and others. But what do you see as being the state of the woman in this country, particularly for Black women?
We're in a very precarious space right now. I see us going backwards. This is a moment in which, for centuries, we fought every step of the way as women, and particularly as Black women, to get to where we are in this very race, gendered, very discriminatory society that we know we have to navigate each and every day. And the sad situation is, despite all that work, despite all the bloodshed, despite all the blood, sweat, and tears that have been put into getting us where we are today, what we are finding is that we're going backwards. We have a Supreme Court that has just run renegade over our rights. Yes, they've dismantled Roe, but if you believe that that's where they're going to stop, let me just say, you need to have another thing coming. That's just the beginning, I believe, of them trampling over our rights as a people, in terms of Black people, and specifically as women as well. And so this is a moment in which we have to fight. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. We have to fight in order to not only protect what rights remain, but also to get back what's been lost.
I'm right there with you. We bringing back Jules P., hip hop artist and advocate, and that's part of this conversation. And Doc, I mean, that is not a good place for us to be, considering that there have been a number of efforts by Black women organizations. Of course, we talk about Black Lives Matter, which is ran and led by Black women. Mm-hmm. So why aren't we seeing the type of improvements, even though we're seeing a lot more efforts at this point?
We cannot overstate the damage that the Trump administration had on this nation as a whole, but also specifically on our rights and our safety, quite frankly, in this country as Black people and Black women. And so what we're fighting against right now are the trickle-down effects of his very damaging actions, both in terms of his judicial appointments, but also in terms of the tone and tenor of the country that he ushered in, where white racist violence has not only been, well, I would say it's been embraced, it's been encouraged, it's definitely grown. I mean, if you just look at the statistics, we have a record number of hate groups that came into being under his administration. And we see that he is openly coddling these very violent organizations that oftentimes target us. When you look specifically at what the trickle-down effects of eliminating Roe would be, that specifically, in my mind, targets Black women, given that we are 4 times more likely to die in pregnancy and childbirth than our white female counterparts. And so these are literally life and death issues. And as we are looking towards the midterm elections, I think the thing that we have to be very cognizant of is this is a key way in which we have to fight back in order to begin that long journey of repairing the damage that's been done.
And what role do you see, Dr. Avis, the community playing in that process? Because I still think that we're still kind of like very passive,
Yes.
and you know, in our support. And you know, even for men, I think that, you know, I know that there are a number of brothers in the community who are like, yeah, I support, you know, women's rights, reproductive rights, equal pay, all of those things. But I still feel like we're still the minority, right? You know what I mean? That there hasn't been a full blown out effort by the community. And I've even seen some women pushing back on certain things, and surprisingly. So I'm like, wait a minute, as a community, we need to have some real conversations before, you know, we can talk about policy, before we can talk about, you know, law. The fact is that in our culture, we haven't reconciled on where we stand to help other women get further ahead. Are you seeing that same dynamic?
I definitely am. You know, it's really, honestly, it's sad for me to see the amount of fracture between, in many instances, I would say just Black men and Black women in our community right now. It is disturbing, to say the least, to see a lot of hate-filled conversations that I am seeing openly on social media. It is tragic. It is sad. And I want people to really think about this. Who does it benefit to have us fight each other like this? Think about that for a minute. Who does it benefit to have us hating each other in the way that I am seeing it, with the language that we are throwing at each other, both men and women, specifically in the Black community? What is going on? Why do you think that has happened? I'm not, ancient, but I'm old enough to know, to remember a moment when there wasn't this vocal, this loud and overwhelming animosity between us in these public spaces like this.
Yes.
And so it makes me wonder if there has been some specific targeting of messaging to the Black community, specifically to disunite us in this way. Because when we are not together, when we are not unified, when we are fighting each other, that leaves the door wide open for other people to come in and do whatever they want to us, and we will not even notice that it's going on.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. And I would have to agree, Doc, that I would say within the past 10 years, the level of vitriol that we see communicated from men to women and women to men is it gets so bad. And I remember having conversations about men and women, relationships, and even, running a household. It's getting down to this issue of pointing blame.
Yes.
And I'm like, where do we, and it's hard to even on a space like this, it's like, I don't even want to have those conversations without having an expert voice, just simply because we got into our heads so many crazy thoughts about each other that it's like we need somebody to buffer or to help to debunk some of the mythology that we see that we have about each other. And I'm like, where did you get this from? And when we're looking at women, the value of women, this is going back to this campaign of A Day Without Us. Mm-hmm. And Keena, I want you to pop up on the screen, bro, just a little bit about what was reported in the Root as it relates to this day. Take a look at this, folks. When you're talking about A Day Without Us, this is an event that was, this happened again last Friday. Black women from several reproductive and racial justice organizations are challenging Americans to put down their work and come together for a collective day of action that they call the Day Without Us. An event which is being organized by advocates at the Frontline, Netroots Nation, and several other national advocacy partners also marks the 46th anniversary of the Hyde Amendment. And for those who don't know, the Hyde Amendment blocks federal Medicaid dollars, along with all other federal funds, from going towards abortion care, meaning Medicaid recipients have to pay out of pocket for care. Many Black reproductive advocates argue that keeping Hyde in place makes abortion care costs prohibitive for low-income folks who simply can't afford the hundreds or even thousands of dollars in out-of-pocket costs for abortion care. So when we're looking at some of the big policies, it's hard. It's hard for us to even get to that place if we don't find some consensus among each other first. And
Absolutely.
I don't know how to do that, Dr. Avis. I really don't. I don't know if we just need to have some more guided conversations about this, because, or if it's a matter of generation, because you got 25, 30, 35-year-old Black men who say, man, all these women are a bunch of this and that. And all these young ladies, like all these dudes or N-words are a bunch of this and that. Like, I don't know how we can even get to that place of talking about keeping the Hyde Amendment in place if we can't even see the value of ourselves just from personality.
Oh my God, that's so true. And that's what makes this moment so potentially tragic. Well, not even potentially, tragic in my eyes. Because you might recall, you remember the studies that showed, for example, in the election that actually resulted in Donald Trump sliding into the White House, there were some studies that was done after that talked about all the money that was injected in that campaign from right-wing entities here in the United States, as well as even from Russia, specifically targeting the Black community with messaging that was meant to make us think that the person online was actually a Black person, but it wasn't. And that person, and they were targeting us with messaging to make us not want to vote at minimum, or make us vote for Trump. But the main thing was to make us not vote. They wanted to suppress our vote. And it was a very effective campaign. They spent more money on the Black community trying to suppress our vote than on any other community. For example, than they spent on the white community trying to get them to get out to the vote, for example, for Donald Trump. Now, here is why I'm bringing that up. As I alluded to, these types of vitriolic leanings, to me, they are a somewhat recent phenomena, and it's tied to so much in our culture, but it makes me wonder, it makes me feel like we're getting played. Are we not seeing the same? Is it possible that the same sort of activities can be going on right now, injecting, if it's not complete trolls like was the case, or bots like was the case previously, are people being paid to inject specific vitriolic venom in this space, one against the other? Because what you said is absolutely correct. When we are busy fighting each other, name calling each other, hating literally each other, then guess what? They get to run amok in terms of all of their policy goals that they have, that they're going after. And you're exactly right. How can we unify around helping poor women be able to access reproductive freedom and reproductive justice if we sit in here calling each other every name but, child of God, as my mom would say? It is crazy to see what's going on. I mean, I was speaking to my assistant about this the other day. I feel like right now we are under attack as a community. We are at war, or we have entities that are at war against us, but we don't even realize it. And you can't even win a fight if you don't know that you're in a battle. You can't win the fight if you don't even realize you're in a battle. And my fear is that right now we are in this battle and we don't even know it. And that means that we're going to lose.
Absolutely. Jules, I want to bring you into this conversation as well, and share your thoughts. Pose your questions to Dr. Avis Jones DeWeaver, who has always talked about these issues on Roland's show. But looking at the big picture, Jules, we got a lot of work to do, and it's important that Black men stand in support of Black women, not just in words but in deeds as well.
Right. So a couple of things that Dr. Avis brought up, and I think they were key. So when she started talking, I started thinking about coming from different communities. So a former community I lived in the city, it's like when you look around, all you see are liquor stores and you see, corner stores. Those are the type of things that are trying to implant into that community to keep that community doing what it's continued to do, so it doesn't focus on trying to get out of that situation. And that's the same thing I feel like it relates when talking about women's rights. It's like when she's saying that, we're fighting against each other so much as far as the culture because we're implanted with what's been given to us around in our spaces via social media or via our actual lives. And so much is being brought to us negative that's around us that all we know is the negativity. So instead of trying to fight for what's right to get out of those situations, we're continually battling against each other. And then there goes the issue at hand being taken away from us again of women, of Black women. Now is no longer going to be on the forefront because we can't even focus on getting ourselves out of these situations because we're now battling against ourselves. I remember a key story I used to tell people all the time. It's like when I did a lot of my community activism work, if you notice, a lot of times I don't associate my name with but so many different community organizations. The problem with that is because everybody wants to be the leader to fix the community, but nobody wants to come together and say, hey, we all got the same ideas, let's work together. No, there's always a power struggle. So somebody has to be on top. Oh, this is my idea. This is who I bought. Instead of, hey, they're doing the same thing I'm doing. They're doing the same thing we're doing. We all working the same goals. Let's push the goal together. But it's too many minor organizations all doing the same thing. Look how many organizations in the city. Look how many clubs and different things are trying to push the same agendas, whether it's for women's rights or for urban rights as well in these communities. And it's like, churches even as well, because I can bring up the religious side as well, them trying to do their part. But it's like, hey, if you sit down and focus on the issue and let the issue be the drive instead of your personal clout or your personal following on social media or your personal media gain that you can get or financial gain, then that's where the issue lies. And that's the point that when she spoke about that, that's what struck the most with me.
So, and I think that Dr. Avis, that when we're talking about you, and I think Jules is hitting on a cultural point, which I think is the trend right now, that if you talk about male-female relationships, then you're going to get some attention, right?
Oh,
that
yeah.
if you I saw some dude, my wife showed me some post some dude made about Rihanna performing at the Super Bowl and how by her just having her baby, she needs to be at home. He said, as a man, I would encourage you to stay at home with your child, not move around as much, take care of yourself. And I'm like, who the hell is this guy? You just some random Black man telling a sister as if women never worked while they were pregnant or didn't go back to work after they gave birth in a very short period of time. Don't jump around. Don't, sister, you should be home. I'm looking at this guy like, boy, you on the wrong side. And boy, did the internet light his ass up, guy. I ain't seen so many Black men, but then a thought to me came to my mind was like, dude is just trying to get some he was just trying to get some clout, right? And here's the problem. You are going in on your sister.
Yeah.
For and Doc, you asked this question, what do we gain? You really gain nothing.
Oh my God.
We really gain nothing, right?
Exactly.
And when I see those type of, and I see posts like this all the time from Black men. I see posts, crazy ass posts from Black women about men. And I'm thinking to myself, man, yeah, we really going in the wrong direction because the enemy of our rise is looking at all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And you said it. And so so people don't think it's a conspiracy theory for me, Doc. You said it. You said something must be going on where ideas are being introduced into the conversations, whether it's in a social media post, whether it's in meetings. Something is going on to disrupt the unity of Black men and Black women. Something is legitimately going on. And I think that we as our people, and this is why we have the show, we have to recognize when somebody trying to sow a seed of dissension among the family.
Yes. Yes, we sure do. I mean, come on now. If we know just a little bit about our history, okay, then we would know. When has there not been a moment? I mean, it just came out the other day about how the FBI had been, in essence, spying on Aretha Franklin for 40 years, right? All the way up to, all the way up to, I think it was 2007. I mean, this is very, very recent. So what I'm suggesting here is, when have there not been outside forces attempting to redirect our narrative from within, from infiltrating us, right? And making us to think the way that they want us to think in order to cause internal dissension. The whole point of COINTELPRO was not only to murder people, but also to cause internal dissension, right? And I just want people to understand that hasn't gone away. Like, and it's beyond even the old system, and it's beyond the FBI. I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you. That's why I'm suggesting that. You know, I think about my parents. You know, I think about that generation. I don't even have to think that long back. I mean, I'm just thinking about old school hip hop, like my era of hip hop in the 1980s, for example. That's how old school, you know, that's some real old school hip hop. So, you know, in that moment, you know, even if you're just talking about hip hop and how what the focus was, what we talked about, you know, the focus on history, on improving our self-esteem, on knowing who we are, on respecting one another as men, as Black men and Black women, and the very intentional shift in the direction of the music and the messaging that was then infiltrated into our culture from that very intentional shift. And you think about so many things that have happened since then in terms of what's going on in social media. My suggestion is we do have to be more discerning about the what we are hearing in these public spheres, and then be able to critique who benefits from us believing this. And when you start to think in that way, then you can have a more critical eye at the information that you are being spoon-fed, and be more selective about what you value and what you don't pay 1 second's notice to, so that you won't get caught up in that system of hurting ourselves so that other people can win.
Well, I see a couple of things, and Jules and Doc, I would love to get your take on this. One is, I think now we're at a place where Black men have a different value system than Black women. We're seeing things differently as it relates to community, as it relates to family, as it relates to ourselves. So our value system seems to be misaligned from each other. The other thing is, we're seeing that because, and I've been wanting to talk about this, Dr. Avis. There's been a recent book that's come out called Of Boys and Men. And Of Boys and Men, the author talks about how the status of the man, not just Black man, but the man in America, is on the decline, whether you're talking about in the educational space, the social space, the economic space, that we're seeing men on a decline, and so much so that men no longer feel motivated to lead the household, to lead the communities. And we suffer, and we're seeing what they call an aspiration gap, where men don't have the same drive and ambition and motivation as women. So I'm seeing all of these things in play, and I'm thinking to myself, Dr. Avis and Jules, like, that just goes to show us the misalignment. We got the values issue. Now you got men who the country is looking down upon, not just Black men, because white men are suffering too, right? Latino men. But we're seeing that men and manhood is under, for lack of a better word, is under attack, so much so that men just don't want to be men no more. Men don't want to be the support. Men don't want to be the backbone. Men don't want to be the foundation. And so women have to step up to lead. Women have to say, I want autonomy of my body. Women have to say, I want to be paid more, without the voice of a man behind them. And I'm wondering, with this trend going, are we going to see a different America in the next 10 to 15 years? We often talk about the idea of a woman not being president, but I can see that happening.
Mm-hmm.
I can really see that happening because people are losing faith and hope in men.
Interesting.
Jules, what's your take, bro?
You ready? Because I
I'm ready, Jules. I'm ready.
Okay. So I hear about it all the time and I see it often. So preface myself, my comments are just pertaining to me and my spaces, so nobody take offense. I came from a black woman. I was raised by a great black woman. I have a great father. Let's not take nothing from that. But I grew up in a single parent household. So my mother did a lot to make sure that I was on a straight and narrow to get to where I had to get to in life to the stage now. Because I'm on the culture. So obviously I got some little intellect to be on the show to talk and discuss and a myriad of topics, whether it be politics, sports, women's rights, whatever. I can talk it because of what I was raised by, what I was seeing, and what I seen growing up. The conversations that I hear a lot of times in this day and age, and I'm sad to say, but I'm going to say it, is about the lack of the power of the respect of the man. The men now are soft. SAWFT, soft. Okay? And that's what black women have to deal with on a consistent basis. They don't want to work. They don't have no ambitions. They don't want education. Some not even raising their children. And that's the problem that's keep on happening. And that what's happening is you're having more and more generations create more and more soft men. So there's no more masculinity in the man because it's being taken away from us on both sides of the argument, whether it's from the men being raised in their communities or from the argument of, from what we're looking at a political state or day and time and age now where, the masculine man is not the dominant now because you have so many different types of genders and things going on and the genders being preached in the forefront of social media and culture right now. So there's so many different ways that a man is being broken down, whether it's from the household, from his community, or from the actual state of the world. So now that they're trying to find an identity and they've been the problem finding the identity, a lot of them are so, men are short-minded when it comes to some issues like this, that they're just going with what they see instead of trying to get the information and gain and research to be better, do better, and provide better, to be the providers that we're supposed to be and take care of the responsibilities that we're supposed to take care of. Simple things like taking out trash or dumb things like that you won't even do, but you stand in a woman's house for 20, 30 days straight, not doing nothing but sitting on your behind. But, I'm sorry.
Jules, calm down, brother.
I'm sorry, culture. I've been on one today. I'm sorry.
Hey, look. If you soft, SAWFT, if you soft, don't come over here in this space. No, but I hear you, Jules, and I feel like Dr. Avis, that because of this cultural space that we find ourselves in, it all leads us back, just going back to where women stand on these issues. Yeah. It's all opening the door for women to be under attack.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I think about, for example, oftentimes Black women are criticized for being, in essence, too strong, like the strong Black woman and too independent, all those things. And therefore, we're not perceived as very feminine, for example. And I think the larger point that was made here is that, we are who we are because this is who we have to be to survive, period. And it's that comes from a history of being right beside you all, being right beside our men, in the fields, in those spaces where we've been the brunt of the whip, just like you, right? And so we have built up this strength that, unfortunately, I believe sometimes we're attacked for being who we've had to be to survive. And not just for us to survive, but for us to be able to make sure that our children survive, for us to make sure that you survive. We couldn't be the dainty little feminine woman that maybe a white woman could be. If we were that, there would be no Black people in this country right now. I'll be perfectly honest with you, because we would have been killed off, okay? We had to be who we had to be to survive. And all that I ask as a Black woman is that we are not castigated for being that. Is that we are recognized and, recognized for being that source of sort of strength that makes sure that our family is here, that our family lives, that our children are able to, have their future and be recognized for that and not be castigated for it. I think that to me is a minimal ask that I would like to see. a respect for who we are and who we have been and who we continue to be in order for us to live and thrive in this nation.
And I would agree with you wholeheartedly there, Dr. Avis. What do you think, as women made this call on Friday for a day without us to look at the issue again of reproductive rights, looking at abortion, like what do we do now? What would be the next step that you think would be the best step for us to take to get to that goal?
Yeah, well, I think number one, we have to, first of all, right now, we have to all make sure that we're registered to vote and that we actually vote in the midterm elections. This is so critical. It is so consequential. As I mentioned, we are at war right now. And in this moment, in terms of everything that's happening writ large with regards to the policy dynamic, our best weapon is the vote. So we have to make sure that we utilize that. But in addition to that, I would also argue that I really would want to challenge us to take a moment to, reach out to our brother or our sister and have conversations similar to what we're having right now so that we can understand the challenges that Black men face in this nation from a much more nuanced way than you could if you're just a woman trying to think about. Like, I have sons, right? And I am very sensitive to, the world that they face, because obviously I love them, but I would never actually know what it's like for them to navigate this space in a Black male form, right? And the reverse is true for them, understanding what it's like for me to navigate this space as a Black woman. And I think it's very important that we get some greater understanding between us as a family about what the challenges are that each of us face in our dynamic, and then start to really make a commitment to make sure that we are there for the other one, right? To support them, to lift them up, never to castigate them down. You will not find any place where I am anywhere saying negative things about Black men, this, Black men, that. First of all, I know it's not true, right? I love Black men, had an amazing father, love my sons, I'm telling you. But in addition to that, I understand that that is a very dangerous venom to our community. And we just need to stop it. We need to stop it, grow up, and have the courage to actually speak to people with respect, and maybe you'll learn something.
And it's got to be, I want to take it one step further, Doc, if I may. It has to be very genuine, authentic love.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I think that there has to be, and I'm just bringing it up because it's one thing to be like, oh, I love Black women, versus another thing is that you're sacrificing yourself in some way, shape, or form to make sure that women are seen and heard, that you're opening up your platforms. Whatever you do, that there is an open invitation, even if a woman disagrees with you on certain things, that she has the space, she has the support, that there has to be some level of sacrifice, because we know women have, we don't have to go through the history, so we know Black women have always been there. But for men, there has to be something intentional. It can't just be conditional. It got to be unconditional. It's like, even when you don't agree with a sister, you applaud the sister because she's standing up and speaking her truth. Even if you do agree with the sister, then you continue to applaud the sister and you show your support. It's got to be something intentional and authentic about it, because I know as men, it's trendy. And I know for young women, you might have heard this from young men, it's trendy for a man to say, no, I'm all right, I'm all in. But when it comes down to making those decisions about your family, making those decisions in the relationship, making those decisions about social issues, that's when you know what kind of man you're dealing with. That's when you know what type of woman you're dealing with.
And
yes, ma'am.
No, I was just completely agreeing with you. I mean, you can say anything in the general sense, but how do you follow what you say up with actions? That's where it really counts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let me just take a couple of comments from our online culture crew, Dr. Avis, because we got a lot of people that are checking in. First and foremost, I didn't know you had such an amazing fan club because they just all jumped into our online chat. Culture crew right here. They love you, Doc. They watch you on RMU. They love you. People getting the heart emoji. Dr. Avis.
Hey, everybody.
They love you. Look, check this out. Taylor, you checked in and said, agreed, the social media informed generation is the perfect playing ground. Yup. Jules, you talked about that. It is, we all getting played, as Dr. Avis said. And we might just have to start jumping off of the offline when you see certain conversations brewing. Don't get involved. Don't read the comments. Matter of fact, drop a jewel and say, hey, this is adding to the division, something. But we got to definitely see that we're all getting played right now. Brother King Lee, you checked in and said, right on, Sister Avis. I think many of us are being played through trolls, etc. Yep. Tiana, you checked in. You said this conversation needs a whole hour. Well, we gave it about 30 minutes. So, y'all can have the other 30 minutes offline. But Tiana, I appreciate you. And you're absolutely right. There's not enough time to talk about how do we mend the differences between the man and the woman. McCole, you checked in. Good to hear from you, McCole. You said Black men and Black women must work together. We must love each other and support each other. There is an agenda to keep us divided. We are stronger together. Absolutely. Absolutely. Best way possible. You said touchy subject, but we got to talk about the decline of Black men in the family structure. Facts. We do have to talk about that. But I think, and here's the thing. When we talk about those things, how we talk about those things matters.
Yes.
And I'm saying that if a woman is like any woman who's sharing with you her heart, don't just bring up the stuff that's on your heart. Just listen, bro. Just sit back and listen. If a woman is saying, I want to have a talk about a day without us, don't be like, well, what about the Black man's day?
Don't all lives matter us, in other words.
Right. Now you're taking away. Now you're messing up the issue. Exactly.
Joker talking like Negro, you ain't even think about a day. Now, as soon as we talk about our day, you talk about, well, where's my day?
Like a kid, where's my toy?
I like the Dr. Davis. Don't all lives matter us. Thank you so much. P. Jackson, you said women present a more masculine energy to be a boss, and more men are displaying more feminine energy. And that's not by nature. That's by design. That is by design, folks. We're not, look, we can't act like certain things aren't happening around us. We got to look at that. P. Jackson, thank you. Rashida, guess you said Jules P. sounded like he was rapping the issue. Love it. Yep. And best way possible, you also said Dr. Avis doesn't allow those Black gender wars on any platform. I love her perspective and appreciate her efforts. There it is, right there. There it is. Dr. Avis Jones the Weaver, we are truly, truly appreciate you. We know you've done on a hell of a lot of great work. A women empowerment expert. You teach folks about career and about making the best decisions. How do people get in touch with you? Because it is women and sisters like you that's going to take the culture to the next level. And that is taking the culture to the next level. So how do we get in touch with you, sis?
I appreciate that. So you can all log on to dravismentoring.com and find out more about me and what I do. Excited to see you over there.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shooting.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage. as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
And this is a topic that I see that has been trending and is catching a lot of momentum. And I'm very, very happy to have this conversation with all of you today. Here's the situation. Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul, who died back in 2018. We have loved and admired our sister for not just her music, but what she stood for. But did you know that the FBI has been monitoring our Queen of Soul for so many years? This is coming from The Guardian. Check this out, folks. Take a look. The FBI has declassified their its file on Aretha Franklin as of the late Queen of Soul, who died in 2018 at age 76. Here's the thing. The 270-page document, which includes reports from over a dozen states, shows the Bureau's extensively tracked the singer's civil rights activism and her friendships with Martin Luther King Jr., Angela Davis, and others. Now, this file that was requested via the Freedom of Information Act by journalist Jen Dies, she posted excerpts in this lengthy Twitter thread and reported by Pitchfork. It also includes close documentation of Franklin's performances for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, of which King served as president. So we're so happy to have Jen joining us to talk about this, because she put it out there. This is years in the making. And Jen, we thank you so much for taking time out your busy schedule to join us for this. I was fascinated by this. Your tweets. I mean, you have redacted documents from the FBI, declassified at this point, that shows that there was an extensive surveillance on the Queen of Soul. Why did they do such a surveillance on her out of all people?
You know, it's, as you said, it's not surprising, yet you still, I think this goes for most people, you still feel an element of shock or surprise, even though it's literally not surprising knowing what and how the alphabet agencies, including the FBI, surveilled anyone having anything to do with the civil rights movement. So the reason I requested this, by the way, I requested these documents from the FBI, again, through FOIA back in 2018. And so, what is it, 2 or 3 days ago, everything's kind of running together now, but they didn't send anything until then. And by the way, Aretha Franklin is just one of many that I've requested files on. These just happened to come in the other day. So, I mean, their MO was, here is a Black prominent figure, and we are going to surveil her and her every move. And seeing it all laid out, again, the documents are about 270 pages. They are completely incomplete, and I'll get to that in a second. But it's really so stomach-turning, so disgusting, part of what they do. And we'll get to this too. It is part of what they are still doing. These documents show how the FBI infiltrated Black rights, civil rights movements, Black Panther Party, SCLC. They were infiltrating everywhere. They had sources everywhere. They knew everybody's every move. And their what they would do is link any form of standing up for Black rights, for civil rights, as extremism. And so that is what they continuously tried to tack on Aretha Franklin.
So what was the inspiration for you to even request the documents? I mean, were you looking at just Black civil rights leaders and Black artists and Black influential folks during that time period? What made you want to do that research?
Yeah, so a little bit of background on my journalism. I feel like my role as a journalist, and because of the kind of work I do, I am an independent journalist, freelance journalist. I've started 2 different independent companies because of this, so that I can report on what I feel needs to be reported on with no one telling me no. I do a lot of journalism around things like the Flint water crisis, around the way the alphabet agencies, FBI, etc., treat as part of their program, as part of their very being, treat Black people and people of color in this country and have. And I think it's very important, especially for me as a white woman, to do what I can to help shine a light on the mistreatment from the very start, from the very founding of our country that, as we all know, was founded very nefariously, continued to act very nefariously, continues to this day to do really horrible things. So I think it is my responsibility in a way to do everything I can to help uncover and shine a light on some of these things. And so as part of filing these FOIA requests, again, which is one of many, I was glad to finally receive some documents, even though this is by far not all of them. And I've since filed additional requests.
Wow. And I would agree with you. I think that we need to know the true history. But like I said, it's not surprising. But I want you to share with us a little bit about some of the highlights or the things that you think that we need to know about these documents. 270 pages.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that stuck out the most for you?
For sure. And I want to preface this by saying there is a fuller story coming out in a major national outlet. My friend, journalist, amazing activist Afeni has just agreed, signed on to do that with me with a co-authorship. So there's a lot more coming out, but here are some highlights that I find just particularly disturbing. So Aretha Franklin's literal every move was documented. It was like they were the FBI was trying to throw spaghetti against the wall, seeing what would stick, seeing if they could anything at all to stick. For one example, Aretha Franklin was promised a certain fee before a concert. That fee was not given, so she declined to go on stage. Entirely reasonable. There was some kerfuffle in the audience of the concert, nothing to do with Aretha Franklin, not her fault. But the FBI decided to pop that in to a document labeling it as racial unrest or similar. And it's, it was listed as part of a few different, types of incidents like this. Not, Aretha Franklin was one, but again, other prominent Black figures, Black celebrities, civil rights leaders were lumped in the same document. And so there was a constant effort to tie her in with what they deemed as extremism. Anything to do with the Black Panther Party. And in addition, they had their sights set on Angela Davis, as everybody watching knows, hopefully knows. All of I know a lot of my white colleagues are not aware of this history, and we all have a responsibility to know it. But Aretha Franklin was sympathetic and gave her money, gave her time, gave her platform to stand up for what's right, to stand up for injustice. And so her relation to Angela Davis and others was looked at over and over and over again, the fact that she had sent money. They in fact had an FBI in one of the other files, and the one you just popped up on the screen, they went as far as to document her Atlantic Records contract and contacts related to that contract. Now, why would they do that? Why would they pop these in this files? I've had some comments on that screenshot in particular of the documents saying like, oh, big deal. They put her details of her contract down. How nefarious. And it's like, no, dude, you don't get it. Little commenters. This is part of a much, much bigger picture. There was ill intent behind this. There was threatening intent behind this. And we only know it now because finally, as of some of these documents have only just been declassified like very recently and popped in these files. We only know it now. And another thing is they would set up little sting operations thinking the FBI is so smart. They saw a number associated with the Black Panther Party calling a number that they did a little sting operation with a false phone call to peg on Aretha Franklin, saying, okay, the Black Panther Party called Aretha Franklin. What's going on here? And so there's always this stuff. They're monitoring her every move. Now, on the other side of this, Aretha Franklin, as a powerful, extraordinarily talented Black woman, was targeted by the public. She was threatened constantly. Her family was threatened constantly. As we know, her father was shot. The FBI would document these things, but there's one case in particular that really stands out from these files in that her life was threatened. The lives or safety of her family was threatened. And, you know, this was a handwritten, they put these in the file, the scan of this handwritten threatening letter that it seemingly they could easily trace back to who sent it. But the FBI office declined to fingerprint it, stating that, oh, well, it's been handled, you know, Aretha Franklin's brother said that this has been handled by so many people, therefore we're not going to fingerprint it. But there are other, you know, so-called reasons that remain redacted as to why they declined to further investigate, as well as the SDNY declining to prosecute in this case. And so there seems to be a pattern of both targeting and surveilling Aretha Franklin, plus, in my opinion, and this is something I'm definitely digging into more, not protecting her as she should have been and deserved to be protected.
So once word has, you know, because when I looked this up, Jen, your name popped up in a couple of stories, but it is this declassification is now being talked about across all of the major media outlets, right?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, what's the end goal? What is going to be the impact of this new information? And I think for many of us in the Black community, especially those of us who do social justice work, even to this day, right? We know that the FBI, the CIA, as you say, them alphabet boys, we know how far they will go. Yes. We know some of us may have had that experience firsthand, talking to agents and being in spaces with agents. But we know about this. My hope is, I guess that's the big question, is like, you know, what do you want to see as being the impact of this? Do you think this is going to shift the perceptions that people have? Is it going to empower people, educate people? What would you like to see happen?
So my goal in this is to shine a light, but I don't and I won't report on this simply as something that has happened in the past. I think it's easy for people to say, especially people who are not familiar with the COINTELPRO programs and things of that nature. I don't want people to look at this story and say, oh, that was so terrible. Look at what used to happen, because it's still ongoing. They call it different things, but it's ongoing. COINTELPRO was so horrific in what it did. It's been declared illegal. We only still know a portion of what they were doing back then to target Black people and people of color.
Do you think Aretha knew?
That's a thing that I'm very curious about. I have reached out to her estate, and as part of the fuller story, I will definitely try to get a grasp on that. I have to think she probably had to know, because there were leaks all the time from within organizations, civil rights movement organizations, people surrounding her. She had, and with what happened to so many prominent leaders then, I think she had to know, and she had to know and feel a certain way about seemingly not being protected in the way that she should have in the face of threats. And so I also want people to know, kind of going back to the previous point, there's a new program as of 2018. They've declared that it's stopped. Again, they keep just changing the name and saying it's stopped. That's literally doing these same things, called Iron Fist. Ken Klippenstein, formerly of TYT Investigates, had gotten some leaked FBI documents showing that this is continuing. They keep changing the name, and I want to make sure I get the new names correct. So it was called, in 2018, they had these extremist documents, like of extremist organizations that they were looking into, the FBI. And so they labeled, along with labeling the insane MAGA freaks and white nationalist freaks, along with labeling those guys and popping those into documents talking about threats to our country, threats to other people, they put in, without evidence, without examples, Black identity extremists as a group to look out for.
Black identity extremists.
Yes. And so there was pushback. And this was, it seems to kind of be sparked from some of the Ferguson stuff, is particularly why the FBI seems to have been latching onto this. But then they got in a little bit of trouble. I say a little bit only because people didn't really know that this was going on. So in 2020, they changed it. They changed their monitoring to racially motivated violent extremists. But it uses much of the same language, and so they're still doing this. And so it's a particular point to look at this history, what happened with Aretha Franklin and so many others, and to say they were infiltrating back then. There were people within those movements that were FBI plants, FBI sources. It was not safe. People were not kept safe. People, Black people were labeled as violent simply for trying to live their lives. And this is still continuing today. They can change the name as much as they want. They can say, oh, COINTELPRO, that was so long ago. No, they're still doing it.
Well, it's interesting. Well, a couple of things. One is that I read, and this was probably about a year ago, where they had there was a report showing that the FBI had went as far as to infiltrate Black Lives Matter chapters, right? And I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that, and we want to, and I plan to have an FBI expert on to talk about this issue, which is the FBI is currently monitoring Americans through social media.
Yeah.
And looking at the activities because of the rise of white supremacist terrorism, as well as domestic terrorism, and the rise of the sentiment of hatred against the United States government.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about this level of surveillance, this is certainly, like to your point, this is not new. I mean, you can change it. You could change the name. The reality is, it is what it is. You are surveilling Americans, high profile or not, citizens that are part of various groups, that are watching. And I think that speaks volumes. I mean, when you think about, and if anybody's familiar with the time of the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, most of your prominent Black voices were probably under surveillance. Everybody probably had a file. You know what I'm saying? And everybody probably had a file. So to me, you know, this just goes to show that as much as we often talk about, or we often have to tell people, oh man, America is moving forward, you get news like this, and it's just a reminder that nothing has changed. And that's the hard part about, that's the hard pill I think we all have to swallow.
Well, it absolutely is. It is a hard pill to swallow. And I think part of what has to be frustrating, what is frustrating, is that so many people are just completely unaware that this goes on. You know, I can't report it as fact. We might find out in 50 years, but some of the deaths, the murders that have occurred recently, due to protests and you know, Black Lives Matter movement and things like that, people have shown up dead. And I don't think that's a coincidence. Again, I can't report any facts surrounding that. And it takes a hell of a long time to get anything declassified, as we've seen. But I think it's so important for everyone to be aware. And actually, I didn't know that this thread was going to take off. I report all the time on things that don't take off. It's been a hell of a time trying to get mainstream media to pay attention to things like the Flint water crisis. My friends, my sources are dying, getting sick, getting cancer to this day, this majority Black poor city, and getting, you know, mainstream media to pay any attention to that at all has been impossible. So I have to say, I am glad that this thread took off. I am glad that I was reached out to by some prominent national outlets, and that it's going to be published in one in particular.
Yeah.
But this goes to show that it's only because, and this is, you know, it's a good thing, but it's only because Aretha Franklin is such a beloved, known name that they're interested in it. They don't report on, you know, the everyday person. So my goal is using this bit of surge in national attention to highlight some of the lesser known issues, to highlight things that are not talked about, like COINTELPRO, this newer Iron Fist program, the fact that they're lumping people fighting for their rights in with, in my opinion, those who are not looked at enough, things like the Oath Keepers, all of these white militias that are rising up. I don't feel like they get enough scrutiny by these nefarious alphabet agencies. So anyway, my hope is that this brings more awareness, and that I can kind of ride this wave a bit to point to, like, by the way, everybody who is unaware of this, look at this, this, and this is still going on. And here's why, even though this doesn't affect you, you know, speaking to the uninformed audience, like, here's why you have to care. You don't have a choice. You have to care about this if you have any sort of heart at all.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let me get a couple of comments from our audience, our watchers here, very quickly before we wrap up the discussion. And again, folks, we've been talking to Jen Dice, who serves as the founder of CourageNews.com. Jen has been pivotal in getting the files declassified from the FBI, a request she put in through the Freedom of Information Act back in 2018. 4 years later, she finally was able to get the files declassified and released to show the FBI's monitoring of our Queen of Soul, Sister Mother Aretha Franklin. All right, very quickly, let me just go to some of our comments, because folks have been checking in, Jen. Conscious Thought, you checked in. You said the government is always watching. Yes, 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 Lord. And always watching. That's why we got to be careful about what we say and what we share on social media. And if you share some stuff that you know is going to be controversial, or if you're in some things, be prepared to stand strong and defend it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that's all I'm gonna say, Jen. Otherwise, you don't like my music. You checked in and said Harry Belafonte would have been on that list too. Oh, I know his file is thick.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
He's still living. He's still around. Mr. B is still around. His file is thick. It's thick.
Yeah. And just in case people aren't aware, a lot of these figures that we've mentioned, you can go to the FBI vault, and their files, some of their files, I'll say, are there. Like Aretha Franklin's is now there in the FBI vault. You can also request fairly easily. Doesn't mean they'll get it to you in any ever or in any sort of quick time frame, but you can also easily via the FBI's website FOIA things too. Just
Absolutely.
Like this.
That's a great point. Second childhood. You say they monitored Martin because of his work was a threat. Maybe Aretha was doing big things behind closed doors, knowing the spotlight brings problems, yet FBI still caught wind. Hypotheticals. It could be. But you know what? All you have to do, and this is something that we even do to this day very quickly, is that Aretha had the platform, she had the influence, and she had the resources, right? Money or any other resources, right? To help take a cause to the next level. And this is a strategy that I see us employing even to this day, that we say, if you work in social justice, you come across an entertainer or athlete or someone of high prominence, and you say, okay, you don't have to be out front. We can be out front, but your money can support us. You know what I mean? You put something on your social media, help us use your platform to bring an event. And I mean, so it's not unusual to see the relationship between activism and entertainment. That relationship has always happened. That is, especially among Black entertainers and Black activists, always happened, because we're always trying to figure out the best way to get the message out, to make people aware and all of those things. So that's always happening. But to your point, second childhood, you're right. Al, thank you so much, second childhood. Al Hamilton, you checked in. You said, as we can see, nothing has changed. They've always tried to find something criminal or treasonous within a politically powered movement. J. Edgar Hoover, who was Black, attempted to destroy any politically. Absolutely. Hotep Pan Africa, you checked in and said, Miss Franklin was one of many African-American artists and leaders involved in uplifting our people through music and other means who were targeted by the FBI. These efforts persist today. You're right. Absolutely right. They don't change. I wouldn't be surprised if everybody, even Jay-Z, a major figure, he probably has an FBI file because of his ability to move through certain spaces. You can go down the list, Black artists. And here's the thing, Jen, and I think that this is something to your point. If you have a file for doing what's right, so be it. Mm-hmm. We can't be afraid. We cannot be afraid. If you're doing what you believe to be the right thing to do, as Aretha did, Martin did, Dr. King did, and so many other great ones, right? Whether you're Black or white, that's just to let you know that you're doing the right thing. That's the consequence. That's just everybody can't walk that path. And I get it and I understand it. But those who can, who says that this is something that they want to do, like even in your journalism, Jen, as a journalist, and you're digging deeper to uncover these injustices and to shed light on these things, there's a great consequence to you. And there's a safety issue there. I mean, you coming on the show and you opening the doorway because somebody is going to oppose you. So, absolutely. But it's the right thing to do. We can't, the FBI can't hold these secrets anymore. Very quickly, as we wrap up, Jen, how can people stay in tune with the work that you're doing? I know you said, and I signed up for Carriage News as well, carriagenews.com, folks. You can sign up to be a part of getting information, all the latest information. But I know you said a bigger, like a written story, a more bigger expose is going to be coming out. So how can people stay in tune with that?
Yeah, absolutely. My Twitter is at Jen Elizabeth J, Jen with two N's. But yeah, Courage News. I have a Substack, couragenews.substack.com, and I greatly, greatly believe that news and information must be free. I hate paywalls. Yeah. I only pop things behind a paywall if it's like a bonus or extra, so anyone can freely go there and keep up with my news on Flint, on Amazon labor movements, on Starbucks labor movements, all of the movements happening around the world. Speaking of people that I worry about because they're such strong, important figures, like Chris Smalls, interviewed him, things like that. And so that's my focus. That's where you can find me. As far as the wider story, it's coming hopefully within the next week. They don't want me to say which outlet yet, but it's a big one that you guys all know. I hate like hinting at things. I wish I could just say it, not my choice. But anyway, Afeni is going to be a co-bylining that story. If you guys are not familiar with her, at Redis RE on Twitter. Afeni's amazing. And so there's a lot more to come. This is not the end of the road. I've requested additional files. The FBI is having me jump through hoops. Like, oh, if you also want this file in this search, it's like, yeah, I literally asked for that already, but okay, I'll ask again. So there's more coming. And I will stay on all of this. I will stay on Flint. I will stay on everything that's happening right now and everything that I feel matters and goes kind of uncovered in this country in particular.
Fantastic. Jen Dias, who serves as a journalist and founder of CourageNews.com. Jen, we thank you so much. Thank you for your bravery. Thank you for being courageous enough to ask for these files to be declassified and released. So, we'll certainly keep our eyes posted. And again, we look forward to getting more news and information, not just about this situation, but about other things that we need to stay on top of. So thank you, Jen, for your time today. I truly appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you all for watching. And this is wonderful. I'm also taking notes on all of Rochelle's advice from right before I got on, financial tips. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen, for your time.